Florida State is heading to the Big Ten. So this has not been officially announced, but if you've been following the saga, you know that some more stuff is going on. I actually know somebody who is an assistant athletic director in the Big Ten, and she's been giving me some information, and so I wanted to relay that stuff to you. I'm not reporting that all of this stuff is, 100% true and you can go with it. I'm not Pete Thamel or anything like that, but this is the kind of stuff that I'm hearing. I think it makes for good conversation. So essentially, FSU, as you know, is suing the ACC for the grant of rights, and the ACC has countersued back, because if not, then FSU, Florida State, would have to stay connected with the ACC through 2036. That is like way too far away. I can't even imagine what's going to be going on at that time. My daughter was born in 2021, so she would like nearly be in college at that time. I don't want to think about this.
I don't want to think about.
Yeah.
You just took it to a place I don't want to think about. Let's get back to football.
Right. Exactly. So essentially what's going on is the ACC is opening up a bid for Florida State to buy out. What that number is going to be, we don't exactly know, but the number is supposed to be more attainable than what we originally thought. And Fox and the Big Ten really want Florida State to come over to the Big Ten. Florida State does not apparently want to go to the SEC, and the SEC does not have interest in Florida State. So ipso facto, works out that Florida State has an avenue to go to the Big Ten, and the Big Ten wants to make them a full share member. Well, negotiations are starting, and FSU needs to join by August in order to be in by 2025. So we're going to probably be getting some information this offseason about this if things are going to continue forward. But here's the big thing with it all is you've seen all of these teams go in pairs to another conference, right? We saw Oregon and Washington come to the Big Ten. We saw Texas and Oklahoma go to the SEC. We saw USC and UCLA come to the Big Ten. We see all these pairs coming together. Well, the big issue here is that Florida State is coming most likely with Miami. And then the third school, we'll talk about this a little bit more later on, is Notre Dame. Notre Dame is coming because of what's going on with the college football playoffs, those kind of things. Again, we'll talk more about that later on. If you watch the full episode, you'll understand why that is a thing. Originally, the plan was for North Carolina to be that fourth team. However, if you've been following the legal stuff of what's going on there, is that they're having some issues with their government not wanting North Carolina to leave without NC State. So kind of trying to lock them into staying in the ACC. In addition to that, North Carolina is not a viable market for the Big Ten without Duke. So if you are an Ohio State fan or a Michigan fan, you get this because you hate watch your other team, or an Iowa fan or a Nebraska fan, or whatever, Minnesota, Wisconsin, whatever it might be, you hate watch your other team. And that is one of the reasons why North Carolina's market is viable, is because of Duke, who hates them. They hate them. Goes together. Their market is larger, obviously, because of that. However, if you don't bring Duke over, the issue is North Carolina actually going to be viable without a consistent rival in Duke that hates them? So it turns out that these rivalries in college football are actually pretty important, and we do need to actually keep those around. Zach, my first question to you. So obviously, Florida State, Miami, Notre Dame. Florida State is pretty much a lock. We're pretty sure that's going to happen. Miami and Notre Dame as well. We're pretty sure, but obviously those aren't on the same level as Florida State right now. What team or team do you believe makes the most sense to come with Florida State, Miami, and Notre Dame over to the Big Ten from the ACC?
I thought Miami died in 2002. Did I forget that? Sorry.
They did, but they've been resurrected with NIL.
Well, at least they're a shell of themselves. But I am not. I have friends that are Miami fans that I love, but in general, they've been chirping like crazy, and I don't understand why. But that's neither here nor there. That's not what you asked me. I think UVA makes the most sense with those three because of the academics and because of the recruiting opportunities, the pipeline, and the networks. You'd get the Virginia markets. You'd probably get some Southern Maryland markets. You'd get DC. You get DC with Maryland, but it would make sense with Maryland. You get UVA. And for those who might say, well, what about Virginia Tech? that's never been like it's a rivalry, but remember they were in separate conferences for a long time. Virginia Tech was in the Big East for a while Virginia has always been in the ACC. And so while I don't think you get a great football program, you do get, I think, a viable market booster, which I think it's similar to Maryland and Rutgers, quite honestly. Like you weren't getting Rutgers and Maryland because they were stellar programs. You were getting them because you were capturing the East Coast,
Right.
and particularly the two of the biggest media markets. I think with UVA, you solidify the DMV area, which I think is huge, especially for recruiting, but also for media rights. And if you look at the whole map, you know, Notre Dame makes sense because it's Notre Dame. They probably have the biggest national following. But then I always thought Florida State made more sense than Oregon and Washington because you are going to capture the Southeast market, which is the one you really couldn't get with their current footprint. You could get West Coast with USC and UCLA. You get more of it with Washington and Oregon. Mm-hmm. But Florida State unlocks the one piece of the country that the Big Ten didn't have access to. And so from a media perspective, you get UVA and Florida State and Miami, combine it with Notre Dame, and you essentially have the whole country now in terms of the major media markets. And so I think it's checkmate in a sense of media rights for conferences.
Yeah, that's really interesting to think about. What do you think, Connor?
For me, I mean, honestly, I think that I didn't think about Virginia at first. I think that they'd be a perfect addition. They kind of match up well, especially with as far as style. But for me, I wouldn't mind going after a team like Syracuse. You know, I think that a team up in that area would be another team that, you know, it's cold up there. They fit the mold of playing a physical style. I want teams that kind of, you know, mesh well and come in as opposed to the USCs and, you know, Washingtons that have this Pac-12 style offense and, defense. So, I just want to see a team like Syracuse, maybe even, we already talked about NC State, their defensive line and their linebackers. They remind me a lot of Iowa. So they kind of give me the most match up well. As I'm not really thinking as far as markets, I'm thinking as far as like a weekly like matchup base here. So who I want to see Iowa against, who I want to see Ohio State playing on a weekly basis, things like that.
Yeah, no, that makes total sense. I try to think of both the market and like who do I want to come in. I don't think from what I'm hearing the Big Ten is thinking of anything of like play style, which is kind of unfortunate because you would like for conferences to think of that stuff, but you know, it is what it is. It's all about money, right? This isn't about, you know,
100%.
Let Big Ten fans watch that.
Right, yeah, I'm just
right, exactly. Exactly. But I think the same way. Because I actually thought of Syracuse as well. I was like, man, Syracuse would be great because they could, you know, they do play kind of that more physical brand of football. And, you know, what were they built on? They were built on running the ball. I mean, that's when you think of Syracuse history, that's what you think of. And North New York offensive linemen are actually not terrible. I mean, that's one of the areas where they actually do okay in recruiting. So I thought of them as well, but I also thought of Georgia Tech just because of the market down there right now. Georgia has that pretty well locked up with recruiting. But if you get the Atlanta market down there and you get them invested, and, you know, we talked about the recruiting for the DMV, like they're, you know, one of the best states for recruiting right now behind probably only Texas and Florida is Georgia. I mean, I feel like Georgia has better recruiting right now than even California does in some ways, at least overall, you know, giving you every single player that you want. So I think of them. And then kind of an outside thought for me would be Boston College. They're kind of a weird idea there, but you think about like nobody is really up in the Northeast and right there in the middle of Boston. And like, you know, I know the rumors of like why Bill O'Brien went there for his family and stuff like that. But like, I still think back to that and think to myself, like, why would you take Boston College? Like that job is just not, like, it's not a good job. It's not a whole lot of money. Like,
not a whole lot of appeal, in my opinion.
Exactly. Like, and I get like he, you know, is a home guy and stuff like that. But like the guy went to Alabama. You know, the guy went to the Texans. The guys went to the Penn State. Like, obviously, there's a part of him that doesn't have to stay home, and he was at those places for a long time. So I don't know. Maybe there are some rumblings there happening with Boston College that we don't know about, or maybe this is just me looking into something that's not really there, and it is just quite as simple as, you know, the idea of he wants to be near his kid who is sick and has a disease and wants to help, you know, do that more. I don't know. Zach, is it crazy to think of Georgia Tech, Syracuse, or Boston College?
No, I hadn't thought of them, and Georgia Tech really fits the media standpoint,
right?
But I think if you want a balanced conference, I think whenever we kind of fan book it, you do it on NCAA, it's like, how can I get Alabama, Ohio State, Georgia, and USC in the same conference?
Right.
But like there are logistics to this, and I think with Boston College and Syracuse, you really fill out the bottom. I don't mean this negatively, but like you're filling out maybe the lower prestige of your conference, which you do need because, Northwestern, like you want Northwestern to thrive in your conference. You want Rutgers to thrive as best as they can. Like I think one of the greatest stories that I covered on the show, and I know we've talked about this several times, like Rutgers went 6-6 with a ridiculously hard schedule. And it was a huge success. It was a big story. David Braun winning Big Ten Coach of the Year, big story. And like, they're not winning playoff games, but like that's always been the heart of the Big Ten, is not just celebrating the superpowers, but also celebrating the teams that have really worked hard and really made a really good showing of themselves. Even just talking about Bill O'Brien, like we celebrated him taking Penn State to heights that we never thought they would because of the sanctions.
Right.
And not because he won a national championship. And so I think Boston College and Syracuse, again, you're hitting markets, like you're hitting more of that Boston market. You're hitting more of the New York market. So like, I think there's viability there, and you're filling in more of maybe the lower tiers of your conference, which I think is actually more important than people realize.
Yeah, no, that's a great point. You have to have those guys down there. Otherwise you're just leaving, the teams that struggle more down to, essentially die. And it's like, if you're a team of Ohio State or Michigan or Oregon, then you're like, oh, okay, it is what it is. But then, to them, it's not, it is what it is. They want to have seasons and compete too. So, Connor, what do you think about those three teams, Georgia Tech, Syracuse, and Boston College?
I absolutely love it. Like I said, I mean, I'm all in favor of Syracuse. They'd be the team I want to add, but Boston College, completely forgot about them. That's a team that I've seen Iowa play in a bowl game before, and it was just like the most gritty matchup ever. I think that they fit that mold. And again, I'm thinking just as far as play styles, but I really do appreciate a team like them, especially with a Bill O'Brien. You've seen him elevate all these teams over the years. So I don't think that it'd be far-fetched to see them join and actually elevate and be a team that's comparable to, a Nebraska or Iowa or Wisconsin in that area. Maybe not. That's probably a reach, but. And then Georgia Tech, I mean, you guys already nailed it on the head as far as the media. I mean, they've kind of changed their play style over the years, so it's kind of hard for me to really see where they stand, but I'm all in favor. Just bring me whoever.
Just get it done, right? Let's fill out this conference and make it happen.
That's what I'm saying, man.
I feel that, man. I feel that. All right. Well, good discussion there, guys. I think that it's going to be really interesting. And honestly, I feel like, and this, I don't have any information on this. It's just what I feel like. I feel like once we add 4 more teams, and like, I feel like that's kind of it for the ACC and the Big Ten. Like, I don't see them trying to reach 30 or something like that. I see, 22, maybe 24 is what they fill it out to. But at the end of the day, like, at least for the foreseeable future, I don't see the Big Ten wanting to go much more after that. So thanks for listening to the Big Ten Huddle. Please do like and subscribe. We appreciate that. If this was your first time listening, we are the Big Ten Huddle. We cover all things Big Ten football and basketball. We have a long episode every Sunday, Tuesday, and Wednesday night, all at 9 o'clock. So come in, check us out, get in the chat, let us know what you're thinking. We would love to have you join us and learn more about the Big Ten.